Podcasts, books, and you. This episode will be quite different than all the previous one. First of all, we will talk about those three things. Now, you might wonder, what do I have to do with this? Well, let's wait and see. Well, let's begin with podcast. So, in today's episode, I will share with you how this podcast came about and how through this podcast became the book Become Empowered: Echoes of Grace and Strength, real life stories of women's transformation and triumph. And that book was released last week and became a bestseller. So let's stay tuned and let's hear the whole story. It all began when I was waking up in the middle of the night. Well, actually, it was in the morning. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And then this one word came through my mind again and again: become, become, become. I had to get up and write it down. I didn't know at that point that this will become a podcast and that this will turn into a book and that this also impacted you. So let's step it back a little bit. I had a visit from a colleague and we kind of brainstormed together how we want to move forward with our online business. And it was such a great meeting. But throughout that meeting, I was sharing part of my story and I was singing a song to her, and she was like, her eyes were getting this big. And she said, Sabine, you must share this. And then she asked me, what is it that I was teaching? What is it? What is the message that I wanted to share? And I said very clearly, we have to become the person we are meant to be, to live the life we are destined to live. And that eventually became my tagline for this podcast, because I truly believe that there is greatness within each one of us. And I even wrote a book about it, or not about that, but rather about the fact that we can unlock that full potential that is within. So that's how it all began. And then now I found myself getting up early in the morning, become. And that's when I knew I have to start a podcast. You see, during that meeting with my friend, she also shared her story. And it was a very empowering story of overcoming adversity, of overcoming divide. And I thought to myself, wow, a lot of people go through challenging times. And they need to know that they are not alone, that other people went through the same or similar things, and that there is always a way out. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And so I wanted to share that. 5 years earlier, I met Chris Kremitzos, who is the CEO and founder of the PodFest Expo. Back then, he invited me to attend the PodFest, and I did. And I started a podcast right there and then. However, it was out of excitement. And I'm this type of personality that, I love challenges. I love new things. I love to create. So I created a podcast right there on PodFest or during PodFest. But of course, I didn't have the why behind it. I wasn't quite sure why I started it and what the results I want to achieve with this podcast. And so when life stepped in, I abandoned that podcast. Nevertheless, Chris stayed in touch with me. And eventually, he invited me to speak at the virtual PodFest that now was only virtual because of the pandemic that happened. And then eventually, I was invited to speak at the first in person event again. And that was actually exactly at the same time when I had this meeting with my friend and I had that epiphany of become. And I knew then I needed to start that podcast. A few weeks after I attended the in person PodFest Expo where I spoke, I launched the first episode of Become. And that was almost 2 years ago. And that was in June of 2022, to be precise. And ever since, I had weekly episodes that I released. I interviewed individuals from all walks of lives who shared their experiences, their stories of overcoming adversities. And I mean, all kinds of adversities. And very soon, this podcast became very popular and people wanted to share their stories. But I possibly couldn't get everybody on the podcast. So I thought, what else can I do? What is another outlet where I can share stories? And that's when the idea was born of creating a book. And I wanted to create a book in which I share my story, but also other people's stories. And so I just put out the word. And what happened was very remarkable. People were excited to share their stories. And I started interviewing different individuals. And it turned out to be women that were drawn to this book project. And I curated 12 amazing women with 12 amazing stories that are so different from each other. And that turned in to a book with the title Become Empowered: Echoes of Grace and Strength, Real Life Stories of Women's Transformation and Triumph. And that book was released last week and became an Amazon bestseller. Wow. I mean, this was an amazing journey, not only because I was able to share these stories, but also what happened through the journey of working together with these amazing women. You see, through the process of writing their stories, also things started to happen in their life. For some, it was a healing process, going through that story, sharing their story. Others, it started a new business, it started a new opportunity. I mean, I couldn't even have imagined what all happened through that process when I began with it. And it was such a heartwarming and amazing, amazing experience for me as well. So now you may ask, where do I come in? Well, you already have been sprinkled throughout what I have been sharing this far with you. Let me recap. First of all, you are here listening. That means you are a subscriber. You are a subscriber to this podcast. Perhaps this is the first episode that you listen to, and you listen to it because you bought the book. So you perhaps are a reader, or you are one of the podcast guests that I had in the past, or you are one of the co authors, or you are a fellow podcaster who was just drawn to this episode, or perhaps you have been following me on my social media, or you are in my universe one way or another. And perhaps, listen, perhaps you are being featured on my podcast in the future, or you are being featured in my next book. You see, there are so many connections and so many intertwines of things and situations and meetings that is really fascinating to me. And that's why I entitled this episode Podcasts, Books, and You. Because on one level or another, we all are connected. And once we realize that, we know that connections are the heart of everything. Connections and the right communication is powerful. And when you combine those, you can create anything. You can create podcast episodes. You can create a book. You can create blog posts. You can create whatever you want to create in your life with the right communication and with the right connections. And I hope that you stay tuned, that you continue listening to this podcast and give some feedback. And I also hope that you get inspired to start something new or to create something new or just simply expand on what you already have. And if you feel that you need more clarity on that, by all means, get in touch with me. We can set up a complimentary session and I can perhaps help you get that clarity. Just go to talktosabine.com and schedule a time on my calendar. I am committed to help entrepreneurs to communicate better, to get their message out. And one way to do it is to know exactly where you are right now and have a clear vision to where you want to go. Because only with a clear vision can we get the results that we want. The good book said, without vision, people will perish. And if you translate that to your life, if I translate that to my life, I know I have to have a continuous vision for my life in order to experience my life to the fullest. Because if not, I might not perish from the earth tomorrow. I may, because we never know when it's our time. But by that, it was meant to perish from making a difference, perish from connecting with other people, perish from sharing your gifts and talents. And for those of you who know me, you know how passionate I am sharing your gifts given to you by your creator, using the talent that you have to make a difference. I have done that all my life. At the beginning, not consciously. At the beginning, it was purely because I wanted to do what I love, not thinking about the impact that I made. So you see, I wanted to become an actress. I love to sing and perform and dance. But little did I know back then that it turned into a much greater vision. And you don't have to start with that bigger vision, just a small one for you that you want to pursue right now. And once I was done with my career as a stage and TV actress, then it turned to becoming a director. And then it turned into becoming a business owner, an entrepreneur, and a coach and a mentor. And I made a difference in so many young people's and adults' lives. But the most important part, I always listened to that inner voice that we all have. What is next? What is mine to do? What am I here for? What is the next thing that I am called to do? And throughout my career as a performing arts studio owner, I was also developing something else. I started writing music first to the local church. And by the way, that is the story that I share in my book, Become Empowered Echoes of Grace and Strength. How I stepped into that next calling. And when I finally did, it turned into creating more music, producing a CD, actually a couple, and sharing my musical message with the world. And then later on, combining it with my message and with my teachings and my coaching that I do today. So, this is what I wanted to share with you today, the story behind how everything started, how the podcast came about, how the book came about. But it just didn't start with just one thing. It's a chain of things. It's a chain of experiences. It's a chain of choices that we made. And if I hadn't made the choice when I was a young adult to change careers from a desk job to becoming an actress, I don't know if I would be here today and recording this very episode. Because all experiences and all choices are leading to the next. So, my friend, I wish for you that you get the clarity. And if not, seek clarity, however it looks like for you. Find a mentor or give me a call or schedule a call on my calendar. And then start the process. No matter where you are, you don't have to figure it out. It doesn't have to be perfect. It wasn't perfect for me when I first started out, but I figured it out. But that is where you have to start because there is greatness within you. You have a gift, you have talent. Use it to make a difference. And if you enjoyed this episode today, I truly appreciate if you would take the time to go wherever you listen to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and leave a short review. This helps to get the podcast out to more people. And of course, please share it with your friends or share it on social media. I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. And last but not least, in the show notes is the link to get your copy of Become Empowered Echoes of Grace and Strength. And I hope you get inspired and be entertained reading these stories. And perhaps it makes a difference in your life. And you might want to even give it as a gift to a loved one. And if you listen to this episode right now, Mother's Day is just around the corner. So it turned out to be a great Mother's Day gift for sure. Thank you again. And until we see each other again or you hear me again, always remember, serve from the heart, follow your passion, and live the life you imagine.